See what happens. Just see what happens.
Why not?
You know,
what's the worst? Yeah, what's the worst?
What is the worst that could happen? Yeah, click on it. See where it goes. You know, we'll find out live here on camera. We'll know by the end of this episode whether or not you got hacked or not.
I actually did get a text yesterday letting me know that the World Bank had issues with my auditing or something.
No.
And it was from like Becky at worldbank.infographic or something. It was
that sounds very important.
Really, and it was like, oh, I better respond to this text message.
Also, Google is going to take away my business off of Google permanently.
Right.
I just got a phone call about that, so I'm going to have to deal with that at some point. These are important issues that we're dealing with here. All right, we're coming live on Facebook and YouTube. Hello, everyone. This is Close to the Metal. This is our weekly computing podcast where we go in depth with different topics about computing. We do this every week live Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific time on YouTube and Facebook, and then available as a podcast afterward. And thanks for joining us today. We're down one member. Mr. Matt Smith is out somewhere. I don't know.
He's on his way to Build. In Seattle,
he is.
So.
He's going up to Build. Okay. Well, so he's on the road somewhere. I'm Greg Nibbler
I'm Brad Burke
with Mr. Brad Burke. So we've got a lot that we're going to get to today. We want to talk about the overall discussion. It's going to be about security issues, and there's been a ton of them over this last week. And we've got a question on Facebook right now and on YouTube, just kind of asking about if you. I think if you kind of fell victim to any of the hacking that's gone on, especially with the Google one,
the Google
one that's gone around. I have a few friends who fell victim to that because I got a bunch of document requests from them. We're gonna talk about that, explain what happened, and maybe if anybody's willing to admit if they've ever clicked on one of those links, we'll find out about that too. I already admitted last week to something, so I'll admit it here in a minute. So we're going to get into this, talk about three different things that happened over this last week. The Google phishing issue, there's the Intel issue, and then also Google's Project Zero has discovered something with Windows Defender that we're just finding out about. So we're going to talk about all that. We want your comments, your questions, everything right here on YouTube and Facebook, so go ahead and drop those in there and let us know. We do have a follow-up to last week's episode. I just want to kind of bring up, we put a poll up on Digital Trends, Twitter and Facebook pages, and it had to do with Windows 10s that we talked about last week. So you can listen to that episode or watch it, a back episode of that, and get more details on it. But the question we posed was, the new Surface laptops run Windows 10s, which only allows users to download Windows Store apps. Is this a deal breaker? Would you buy the new Windows Surface laptop? And overwhelmingly, 50% on Twitter said that is a deal breaker, and 26% said they would just upgrade to the full Windows 10 for another $50. And on Facebook, it was 66% said yes, that is a deal breaker. So I think overwhelmingly people do not like this Windows 10s issue.
Yeah, I think that we kind of identified that last week as a big issue that people, Windows is always trying to get people to use the Windows platform.
Yeah.
And overwhelmingly, people just want to use their x86 apps.
Yeah.
And
I'm one of those people too.
People have been more alarmist about this. Gabe Newell of Steam has basically said that they are trying to kill things like Steam by implementing things like the Universal Windows platform, because they are. I mean, that's what Steam is doing. You know, that they're selling games. So there's definitely there's a lot of contention around this topic. Yeah, they really. The x86 apps have sort of defined the PC until now, and to just not let people run an exe on their system is a big threat. That is
a big issue. Well, you can follow up and leave your comments on Facebook and Twitter for as far as those polls, and just listen to last week's episode too. We go pretty in depth talking about Windows 10s and the new Surface laptop and what it all means. So you can catch up on that by finding those episodes there on iTunes or on our Twitter page and all those places. So let's get on to what we're talking about this week, though, and that is security issues. There's been a lot this week. Over this last week, maybe 10 days, we've seen so many things, and there's even more today that we're going to talk about, some things that have come up. And we're going to kind of discuss each one of these ones that have happened and get your feedback. We want to hear from you and get your comments, questions. Maybe you fell victim to one of these, or maybe you know somebody that fell victim, and then talk about maybe what you can do to prevent that from happening. I mean, I'll say it. I've clicked on some email links before, not realizing it. I think most people won't admit it. I fell victim to one of the credit card ones one time, and I didn't admit it to anybody for years. But yeah, it was one of the ones where there was something wrong with your credit card, and I was at work. I'm like, oh, fine, all right, I'll just call and deal with this. And I sent off a credit card number and realized it right afterward, and then had to call my bank, and it was the worst thing ever, having to call a bank and say, yeah, I just sent my credit card number to a random email address. I need to cancel that right away. And just the pure shame that I had from it was sucked. So if you want to share your shame, please feel free to post it on there. Don't be ashamed. It happens. It happens to a lot of people.
See, I don't know.
Don't do it.
I was brought up with an older brother, like older brothers who were really into the internet. And for me, like as a kid, it was like, don't talk to strangers, look both ways before you cross the street, don't click sketchy email links. Like it was just, all of these things were sort of grounded in like, change your passwords a lot. Like don't use, don't use your, pet's name or whatever, like all that crap. So.
All good ideas. All good ideas. Well, I fell victim to it, so follow Brad's advice, not mine. All right, let's talk about security issues that have happened. So first up, we're going to cover this one, and it is the Google phishing scheme, which probably some of you out there, and let us know if you did, if you received an email from a friend, maybe you clicked on it. It was a pretty genius hacking scheme to where they sent you, what you would have received is a Google Doc request from a friend. So they would hack somebody's account. That person would send it out to all their contacts saying, hey, I'm sharing a Google Doc with you, which I use Google Docs all the time, so I'm used to getting requests. And you were supposed to just click on it, took you to an official page. Maybe you can explain exactly how it worked.
Well, and that is basically it. The idea was that you had to go through, you click open this docs page, and you would see what looks like, a very typical approve, they'd like to share this thing with you. And you click allow, and then all of a sudden, that's a connected app. And so that's the idea, is that you can attach apps for all sorts of things to your Google account. And in general, that's a really good idea. If you have a strong password and two-factor on your Google account, it's a really good idea to do things like sign in through Facebook, sign in through Twitter, sign in through Google.
Okay.
Because it's an added layer of protection. And if something does go wrong, like in this case, all you had to do is go into your apps list in your Google account and just remove the one that you had inserted on there because it had full access to your account. So that was the whole idea, was just to be able to access anything in your Drive, anything in your Gmail.
Yeah, I don't like that idea at all.
So you got to be careful when you do these things. But if you trust, the people you're working with and the companies that you're attaching your Google account to, it's usually a good way to do it.
Okay.
But you can really cheese it, by sending someone a link and saying, oh, well, it's just it's my friend, I'll click allow.
Exactly. And that's what this was with me, is somebody that sometimes I have shared Google Docs with before, and I got that, and I was a little bit suspicious. I was busy, and thankfully then they sent me like 8 more in a row, and that's what kind of clued me to it. But yeah, so how were they able to get into this and make this work? How were the hackers able to do this?
I think it was an issue with the that they were just replicating the actual requests themselves, and this is like a pretty common thing where you can sort of create something that looks like what would be a legitimate email when it's really not. And the giveaway here was really that you were getting that it was also sending these to like HHHHHHH or UUUUUUU at gmail.com. And so that was sort of the thing that you should keep an eye out for, is, when you're looking at an actual document, one, like, you just ask the person, hey, did you send me this? Preferably on something different than the social media that you're using. So if they send you something on Gmail, hit them up on Facebook and say, hey, did you send this to me? But also look for things like that. Look for things like CCs and BC, like, that shouldn't be there. Weird email addresses.
Okay.
A lot of times they'll use things like a URL will look right, but what they'll do is you can actually sort of comment out a chunk of URL and hide the real URL way out at the end. So it might look like you're clicking, docs.google.com, but really it's like docs.google.com/something/ .. and then the actual URL you're navigating to. So they can really, like, there are a lot of ways.
They're really good at hiding this.
Yeah, so it's just a good idea to just not click these links.
Okay.
It's really
don't click any links, trust no one.
And Google managed to stop it really quickly. Because I think that was the tricky part of it, is that it was sort of spreading, because it'd get access to your account and it would send emails to everybody, and they would get access. So it was sort of this recurring, that's how it works.
Yeah.
A lot of hacking nowadays, people sort of think of hacking as a dude sitting behind a keyboard and typing into a terminal and I've got access.
In a basement somewhere.
I'm in, that kind of stuff. But like most hacking is,
it's got to be
this
dark
kind of
lighting and
a green hoodie. That's
green
what
hoodie. Also, it's some kind of a microphone. Yeah.
So this is the kind of hacking that really happens and really gets people, is social engineering. It's tricking you into thinking you're doing what you think is safe.
Yeah. What would the end goal be? Just to get access to your
access to accounts, because once you're into once you're into somebody's Gmail account, you can do a lot of damage. Like, you can reset the passwords to all their accounts, and you can lock them out of that Gmail account.
Yeah.
And you can lock them out of everything, and with no way to reattach that to their account.
So that's just it.
Use two-factor.
Yeah. Use two-factor. So that's the
we'll
bottom
cover
line.
a lot of things, I think, at the end, but like what you can do. But there's a lot of ways you can prevent this sort of thing from happening. So.
Okay. And again, we're talking about some of of the security issues that have happened over this last week when it comes to computing and whether or not you were affected. If you're watching live right now, let us know if you were affected by any of these, or if you've ever been affected by a hacking scam or a hacking email, or you clicked on some kind of a phishing thing. Let us know. And right now we're talking about the Google phishing scheme that happened last week, which I think a lot of people heard about. They have fixed this now, but just going forward, use the two-step authentication is probably a good idea. And we'll talk about some different ways you can prevent yourself from getting hacked, or at least protect yourself a little bit here at the end of the show. But if you have questions, let us know. So the Google phishing scheme was a big one, but then the other one that's even almost scarier, because you have no control over this really, and this is something that's in the back end that you can't really mess around with, and that's with Intel. Intel having an issue with the vPro processors.
vPro processors.
See that idea, and the thing about this one, and maybe you should explain what it is first, but there's a few things that were troubling with it that I saw.
Yeah. So the idea is that Intel has a thing in their vPro processors.
Yeah.
And this is actually the trick here is that this is something that's sort of been bubbling up for a week or two that people have sort of mentioned, and a security site that has sort of a disparate reputation posted a big thing about how they'd told Intel about it over and over and over, and they had never listened. They always said no. Basically, AMT is the system by which administrators, IT managers, that sort of thing, can manage systems remotely or within a network. And they can do things like push security updates, push applications. And it's a way that in larger companies especially, for people to kind of push out these updates and OEMs to push out these updates and things on a more direct level. Right.
Okay.
So as an IT manager, you can just push an update to everybody in your system at 3 a.m. And it's just
they can just log on and take care of that.
And part of that is that it's called AMT, and it needs a lot of access to the very basic levels of your system,
which is active management technology.
Yes.
Okay.
And so the trick was that basically you can abuse it, as it turns out. You can take this AMT and you can sort of leverage it because it has such a high permission level, and bad actors could theoretically use that to control systems and do what's called, so the idea with these attacks or these vulnerabilities is a remote code execution, which is that you are running a program on someone else's computer that they don't know is there. But you can't just do that. I can't just I use your IP address and run a program on your computer. I need a way to fake administrator access. Okay. And AMT has chip level access. It has like one of the highest access levels you can have.
So like say it's somebody running a bigger company. Everybody's got their company issue computer, so that the IT guy has access to everybody's computer at any time that they want to. Right. And this is getting in through that portal to everyone's computers. Yes. That's scary.
And so, the thing is, it only affects vPro processors.
Okay.
This time, the vPro processor program started in about 2007.
Okay.
And it's basically just the name that Intel gives to a collection of technologies like turbo boost and hyperthreading and things like that all sort of fit under this vPro umbrella. Okay. You can go look at the list of processors that are considered vPro. It's basically every Intel processor made in the last 10 years. Wow. Like if you bought a computer
so that's a lot of
recently,
processors. Yeah.
Like any time recently, like your computer is definitely affected by this. And the thing is, Intel can only do so much.
So as far as fixing this issue?
Intel can fix the issue. They can take your, i7-7700K that you bought, and they can push out a patch to you, and they can fix this issue. But if you have a Dell, Dell needs to push this update to your system. That's how it works. Dell has to integrate that.
To do it. Intel
and theoretically, this thing sort of broke, and Intel wasn't saying anything about it. And you have to imagine at that point they had, they said this issue's in the public now. If it is an issue and we have to put out something, we have to deal with it. Yeah. Or they were already in the process of dealing with it. OEMs have these updates. They have the proper updates, and theoretically they have had them so that when the Intel announcement goes live, they can just immediately push those updates. Because you want that vulnerability out in the public as little as time as possible before those updates. Theoretically, you want updates out before, but it's really hard to push an update without people.
We've already updated, by the way. This happened. Sorry about that. Our bad. Yeah.
Yeah, and so the problem is, older system manufacturers don't really have the desire to, because of the cost, or they don't have the resources to, and they don't have the obligation to support older systems.
So if you have an older system, you're pretty much, you could be screwed.
You could be screwed.
Yeah.
So it really depends. It depends, how far. In a lot of cases, major manufacturers do push out critical security updates for older systems.
Okay.
You can do it through Windows sometimes. Like, it just depends. But this is an issue that is massively, massively widespread. Like, beyond all belief, every computer that is modern, that is running right now, that is not an AMD chip, is affected by this.
By this Intel vPro.
Update. Like, people are so, and we'll get to that too with the Windows thing, but people are so hesitant to update to Windows 10, and they turn off the updates, they turn off everything, and they stay on Windows 7. You gotta stop doing that.
Okay, well, so let's kind of recap this Intel vPro one just a little bit more, because this is kind of terrifying.
Sorry.
No, it's kind of terrifying the way you're saying this. So again, if you're just tuning in, we're talking about security issues for computing that have happened over this last week. We talked about the Google phishing scam, which probably a lot of you saw about that. Now we're talking about the Intel vPro and the vPro processors and how that's been affecting everything. So, and this can affect pretty much every computer, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
And now they've got a patch for it. Some OEMs, some computer manufacturers have not pushed this out. Because Intel can't do that. Only the computer manufacturer can. Yeah. So if I have a Dell computer, Intel can't just send me that update. It's got to go through Dell before I get that update. Yeah. And we don't know who. Have most of them sent it out by now?
Fujitsu, HP, and Lenovo have provided information on their own affected systems.
Okay.
So, excuse me, and that was the last time this was updated. So, they're continuing to push out these updates. Definitely be on the lookout if you're using an OEM system. If you reinstalled Windows, hit that Microsoft update. You just gotta update. This is a massive vulnerability.
Yeah.
And
damn,
we don't know who's been using it. If anyone's been using it.
So how worried should I be right now?
Not if you update.
Okay.
You got to update your system. You'll be fine.
Update. That is one of the main things.
So important.
And again, we're talking about different hacks and different ways that people have been hacked. One of the questions we have right now on Facebook is, what's the worst or most obvious scam email that you've ever seen? Which there are some pretty obvious ones out there. I mean, obviously, the Nigerian princes are pretty big, but I mean, even beyond that, there's some that are just pretty crazy about.
In the real world, my parents actually got caught by one where somebody called them and said, you skipped out on jury duty. The sheriff is coming to arrest you. And of course, this should raise so many red flags.
Yeah.
The sheriff doesn't call you before they come arrest you.
Right.
They don't arrest you for missing jury duty. They just send you an angry letter and maybe a fine if you do it 3 times. And then they said you've got to bring cash, a bunch of cash, down to this address in Southwest Portland.
Oh no!
And this is and I'm at work. My dad calls me. He's like, "You got to get home. This is chaos." And I book it for Southwest Portland, and to their house. And all of a sudden he calls me. And he's like, "It's a scam." And I'm like, "What?" And he explains the call, because I just heard they're coming to arrest your mom. And I'm like, "What?" No. And it was and they called the sheriff, and they were like, "Yeah, there's nobody here by that name. That's not an address we use. We'll go ahead and head there. Please stay away from that location." It was so. These things are absolutely. This is not a new thing either. People, people do this over the phone. People do it.
That's
in person.
Nuts. I get tons of those over the phone from people. A lot of it is usually somebody from, "Hi, this is your local Google representative calling about your business. We're going to permanently delist you unless you call now and re-enlist." And they send these just constantly. And I'm wondering who falls for them, but obviously people fall for it. It happens. And let us know what's the most obvious one, or maybe you've fallen for one, or it's okay. It happens. Clearly, they wouldn't do it with no reason.
Yeah.
I mean, they're making money off of these things. Just watch out for yourself. That's the thing that we're trying to get to here. So let us know what the most obvious scam is that you've seen. If you've got that, drop that into the comments on YouTube or Facebook. All right. So Intel vPro processors. Update your computer. That's the bottom line of what you can do as a consumer. Update your computer. They have fixed it from the access point of the IT managers, right? As far as they.
Well, the problem is that AMT is how they manage systems.
Yeah.
And so when I was reading about this, people online were sort of saying that before Intel confirmed the issue, they were saying the only way to prevent this vulnerability is to disable AMT, which you can do. From your IT manager's computer, you can disable AMT across the board. But you now have to go, when you need to turn it back on to actually re-enable your network and get things going again, you have to go to each system individually, log in, and manually turn AMT back on and reconfigure it.
Okay.
Because you've turned off your way of controlling all of these systems, and it still has local access issues if you have direct access to the system or the network. So it's not really an issue with the way AMT works. I mean, it is in that AMT sort of it needs this sort of access and it needs this sort of connection to the outside world in order to do what it does.
Yeah.
But the issue is that they have solved the issue that allowed someone to do it without the way they were supposed to, remotely and without proper access.
All right, so there's the Intel vPro issue. Update your computer. That's the bottom line. And we're going to get on to talking about another one. And we're just finding out more information about this today as far as Windows Defender and then some different things you can do to protect yourself. But I wanted to address a couple of comments that we have. Vincent says, I'm cynical of everything. If somebody was on fire, or I would be like, are you sure that's a real fire, or is a stuntman trying to trick me? Because as soon as I put him out, he will be like a sucker. He will sucker punch me in the face and take my money. So he doesn't reply to any emails. Also, don't be on fire around Vincent. That's a terrible idea. Duly noted, Vincent. You were clear on that. Armando says, is there an IRS scam? I've been getting calls about it. Yes, there are definitely IRS ones. I get those ones as well.
I got one yesterday. I got a text message saying that the World Bank was auditing me or something. Yeah, like all the time.
Yeah.
Especially around tax season.
Yeah, so don't trust those. The IRS, as far as I know, doesn't really...
They will send you a letter.
Yeah.
If they have an issue, they will send you a letter.
Yeah.
And they will not ask for your email password in that letter. So,
Don't give them their email password. Yeah, and don't reply. Those phone calls are not real. Vicky says, I get emails all the time about my so-called bank accounts being compromised.
Yep.
Yeah, they're just, it's all the time we're being bombarded with this stuff. And sometimes it's definitely hard to fully commit. By the way, Brad, just to let you know, there's a Bill here online who is watching the show. Pleased to be referenced in your discussion today. So he said they actually wanted a credit card, not cash.
Okay. So
there it is. So everybody can fall victim to it. It happens. I gave somebody my credit card number as well online once, and it sucks, but I learned from it never to do that again. And that's part of what we're talking about. Just these security issues. We're hit with them all the time, and sometimes it's easy to slip up. Some of them are really, really clever with the way that they do it, and especially with the Google phishing scheme with the doc. And let's talk about the next one here that we've got. And please keep your comments and questions coming there on Facebook and YouTube. So this has to do with Google has something else. This isn't the phishing doc thing. It's a different section of Google called Project Zero, which I'll be honest, I was unaware of Project Zero. What exactly do they do?
So the idea is that they are keeping track. There's security researchers who are looking for vulnerabilities. There's kind of always this discussion in hacking of white hat and black hat, and that's sort of become really murky and things are different now. But the idea is that some people are looking to hack into systems to steal money or to steal identities or to gain access or information they're not supposed to have. Right. Whereas some people are, and are often hired as consultants and things like that, are hired to hack into systems to discover vulnerabilities and patch them. Often companies will offer bug bounties. So if you're able to find a hole or find an issue with a piece of software, oftentimes the company will pay you because they figure that them giving you $10,000 because you found a hole in Microsoft Word that lets you take over someone's computer, you actually get a lot more than that if you found that, is better
how much
than
do you get?
You get a lot.
Oh,
bounty. Some of these bug bounty programs are, especially if you find vulnerabilities, are very, very... They'll pay you. They'll pay you handsomely because the amount of money that you could make taking that information to someone else is very, very high as well. If you do have that thing that lets you take someone's Microsoft Word and crack their computer open, you can make so much money selling that on the black market to people who want it. There are all kinds of networks for that kind of thing.
Okay.
So you have to offer people. So the
Project
Zero is
just
just a Google-sponsored office that they look for things, especially 0 days, which is something that when it launches, it already has this issue and people are already abusing it.
That's the project.
So the idea is to get ahead of it, and what they do, a lot of them have policies. A lot of these sort of research firms have policies where they say they identify the problem, they give a report to the company, and if the company doesn't act within 90 days, they release it. And the idea is that they're giving the company time to respond and create a patch and get something out before they make the vulnerability public. But it also means that they're holding companies accountable because that company knows, they found this way to get into our users' accounts. And if we don't deal with it in 90 days, that information becomes public and anyone can use it against us.
So Google has this Project Zero team, and they're hacking other companies, competitors, everybody.
They're looking for vulnerabilities.
And a lot of
they're hacking and they're looking for. They're keeping an eye on things that are coming through. They're keeping an eye on code that's coming through, on open source code especially that comes out. and just keeping an eye on things in general. And there are tons of consultant groups like this, research groups like this, that are keeping an eye on things, and it, again, are mostly funded by these sorts of bug bounties where if they can find the thing, if the smart people can find the thing before the bad people do, they can sell it and fix it.
And then they give a company 90 days to fix it before they just
Well, again, Project Zero is not like they're not going for bug bounties. They're just powered.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I'm sure. Rewarded handsomely by Google.
Yeah.
So what this is, onto that. Sorry, I was fascinated by that, knowing what Project Zero did. So here's the vulnerability that has happened over this last week that could be affecting you, and you don't even know it. And it has to do with Windows Defender. The Windows, which comes standard, I think, on pretty much every computer, right?
So that's the trick. Tavis Ormandy, who's a Google Project Zero researcher, tweeted yesterday. I love this tweet. He said, "I think Natashenka and I just discovered the worst Windows remote code exec in recent memory. This is crazy bad. Report on the way. Fire emoji, fire emoji, fire emoji."
Crazy
so he
bad.
really wanted to do it, and then he responded to himself. Getac works against a default install. Don't need to be on the same land, and it's wormable, so it spreads itself.
So what's going on?
And
here?
they didn't say. That's all they said. Basically, is that we've issued a report and
something very bad. A computer may blow up, and by the way, that's it. We'll talk to you later.
Yeah, and it turns out it's actually kind of similar to the vPro issue, where Windows Defender, like most malware and virus protection engines, needs a lot of access to your system. It needs a really high privilege access because it needs to delete files. It needs to stop files before they can download. It needs to work with other programs.
I mean, and that's what you're supposed to trust to do that.
Exactly.
That's why it's there, is to protect you from everything. And now they're implying that it is infected, or it's...
They have the ability to infect it. And that's the idea, is that Google can say, we have the ability to infect this. And in some cases, I don't know if the full report's been published yet. Oftentimes in the report, they'll state whether they've actually identified anyone using it in the wild.
Okay.
I don't know if that's the case with this one or not. But it is, it's an issue that is really, again, is really prevalent. It's really easily fixed by an update. That's all you have to do.
So you
just
can
update. Because that was the thing, is that, they tweeted about it yesterday, and then like late last night, early this morning, oh, look, here's a Microsoft critical security patch. Just happened to roll out.
Just a complete coincidence.
To help fix Windows Defender, which is the default virus application in Windows 10. So if you have Windows 10 or Windows 8 or Windows 7, there you go. It actually just says, it's 8.1 and 10, but...
Okay. So right now, if you are using a Windows machine, if you're using Windows 8.1 or 10, we should be getting an update that's coming through?
Yes, you should already have it.
It
should already have come through.
Okay.
Critical security updates don't roll out like software updates. So there's a reason, which kind of, I think if you are ready to talk about how to protect yourself is a good mistake.
Yeah, I think we might as well. I mean, I guess that's just to recap the Google, Google's Project Zero and what they discovered with the Windows Defenders thing. We don't know exactly what it is because Microsoft has 90 days to fix it, but probably that's what that update is that we all got. But make sure you update your computer. Update. That's one thing that we have definitely learned today. Update. Always update.
Yeah, and part of that is that, these critical security updates roll out differently than your creators update or your Windows 10, whole update.
Yeah.
And that's sort of when Windows 10, there was this sort of big hullabaloo about people, it automatically updates and you can't shut off updates. But this is the kind of thing where they don't want you to shut off updates, and you don't want you to shut off updates entirely.
Yeah, get the updates.
And so that's something that I know it was a big trend when Windows 10 came out. I don't know if it still is. The people were very concerned about telemetry and how much data Windows 10 was sending back to Microsoft about what you were doing and how much of it was attached with you and that sort of thing. People who really felt like their privacy was being invaded. So they started creating all these different versions of Windows 10 where they strip the update parts out of it and they strip out all the extra stuff in Cortana and you shut off all these things and you just lock everything down so that it can't.
Yeah.
And the idea there, I think, is a little, I don't want to say ridiculous, but if Microsoft wants the data on your Windows computer, rest assured they can get it.
Yeah, they'll figure out how to do that.
And if they really wanted to do that illegally, they could. Anyone, even your Linux distro could probably do that, and the open source thing helps. But as we saw, Handbrake got caught, last week. If you were on a Mac user, if you downloaded Handbrake from a certain mirror, there was malware in it. So, these things they're not perfect, but you've got to update. You've got to leave those updates on.
Updates. Yeah.
And move to Windows 10. Like, I know people are still on Windows 7 and that use just such an old operating system. and I know people really like it, and I understand that. Windows 10, you
But
just got to update.
It's
The security updates. It's great performance-wise. It's great feature-wise. Don't worry about that. It's just the things are getting really, really rocky, and because we didn't, to get a little philosophical, we didn't prepare for this.
Yeah.
Nobody really is prepared for the sort of. I mean, these phishing attempts are a weekly basis now. These major security issues in open source programming and in our hardware and in our operating systems are going to become more and more common. They're not going away, and we didn't build the infrastructure to protect ourselves from them before they started happening, and we are forever compromised because of that. We will always be 30 minutes behind, and the only way to be ahead of it is to just stay on top of everything and
take those updates
and don't click shady links. I mean, like the things like that is so that's so like just don't if you get a link from somebody, don't just immediately click it. If it looks at all sketchy, ask them first. If you don't talk to them ever and they send you a Google Doc, definitely don't click it. These things they're sort of internet common sense, but the bigger thing I think is update your system.
Okay.
And if you're trying to protect your identity, there's other things you can do too. Two-factor authentication on your accounts.
I would say that's probably imperative.
It's a big deal.
Yeah,
and I think probably a lot of people who listen to the show or watch the show on a regular basis probably have things like two-factor or a password manager already. But especially on your Google account, on your Twitter account, on your Gmail, throw that two-factor on, and then if anybody is trying to get in, you'll know immediately.
And that's actually a couple of questions that are coming through here because Jack says his ex hacked all of his accounts. Google Pictures, Yahoo, and Google emails and phone, browsing history. Not a professional, but nothing seems to stop her. That two-factor authentication would probably help out a lot with that.
Yeah.
Because that way you at least have it on your phone.
Yeah, and they would try and get in, and you would say, well, someone's trying to access your account, and you'd say, well, that's not me. I'm out grabbing coffee. And it can help. But SneakerNet, as they call it, or is kind of one of the ways that people steal things off of a computer. It seems odd to say that, but sometimes people just steal a laptop and take the data off of it.
Yeah. So be careful with that. Let's see. Vincent's asking, being a PC gamer, it's a must. How important is it keeping all of your drivers up to date? Like, can you let a few days go by before you install? So what about drivers?
That's fine. I would keep your graphics drivers at least up to date. Windows 10 will actually somewhat do that for you. It's been a little iffy lately. But usually Windows 10 will actually automatically update your NVIDIA and AMD drivers, which is nice. But again, like we've seen it depends how fast AMD gets that update out to Microsoft and how fast Microsoft implements it and that sort of thing. So there can be some delay. But I wouldn't say if you're playing a brand new game that just came out and AMD or NVIDIA is specifically saying, as they sometimes do, oh, hey, this is game-ready driver, then there are optimizations for that, and it's a good idea to update before you play that new game. But, I wouldn't say I go out of my way to keep my graphics drivers updated.
Okay. All right. Well, just to kind of recap this, again, the whole show has kind of been talking about security threats and so some of the big three that came out over this last week, but now just what you can do going forward to try to protect yourself. I think, number one, update. Take all the updates that they want to send you, as annoying as they are. That's the best way to protect yourself, especially if you're using Windows right now because of this Windows Defender possible window. There's an update that's been pushed out. Take that. When it comes to your email accounts and all different kinds of accounts, two-step authentication.
Yeah, and preferably, again, like on the subject of issues with security, preferably use apps. Use built-in applications, or like the Google application has a built-in one, Steam has a built-in one, Twitter has a built-in one. Don't use the text message ones. They've found that there have been some security issues with text message based two-factor.
So when they offer you the two-factor of different ways to do it, use the within app.
Use the within
app.
app.
Don't use the text. Because I would have thought using the text would be better because it's a third-party way to do it.
Yeah, but texts aren't really that secure is the issue. So like people were able to sort of, if you can get to someone's text, you can get their two-factor codes. And the other thing about the apps is they often allow you not just to accept entry and say, yes, I am doing this, but they often allow you to say, no, I'm not, and lock down everything so that you can sort of say like, oh, someone is trying to access my account right now that shouldn't be, and you can just like batten the hatches real quick. So that's a good way to do it, a preferable way to do it.
So use it within app. Yeah, within app two-step authentication. Okay, anything else that people can do?
Password managers are good.
Okay.
Don't click shady links.
Yeah, don't click shady links. That's number one. Password manager, so maybe a system of that. Okay.
Yeah, and LastPass, that's what I use. It's great, and it'll generate secure passwords, fill them in for you. You don't have to change how you're doing anything. So that's a good way to do it.
Okay.
But yeah, especially as someone who's saying PC gamer,
Yeah.
you got to get that 2-factor on your Steam account, because I know I would be devastated if someone got into my Steam account and I couldn't get back into it. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So two-step authentication, usually within app. There's a bunch of advice, at least as far as what you can do. And there's articles on everything that we've been talking about at Digital Trends as well. So in-depth articles if you want to find out more about the Google phishing scam or this Windows Defender thing. That article just got updated because it was just happening this morning that we found out more information. If you want to know about the Intel vPro processors, that hack. All of that information, like I said, at digitaltrends.com. You can go there and check that out. Any final word? I think we kind of covered. I think we've covered everything.
Update.
As far as update, yes, that was the
Update,
bottom line.
two-factor.
In case you didn't hear that, update your computer. That is the number one thing. And thanks everybody for joining us too. So this is Close to the Metal. This is our weekly computing podcast. We go live every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific time on Facebook and YouTube. And each week it's a different topic. We'll try to educate you. We want to get feedback. We want to know what you think. And who knows? I'm not sure what we're talking about next week, but we will find out then, because it depends on what's happening. Also, we've got polls that go up on Digital Trends Facebook and YouTube, or a Facebook and Twitter page, that we would love to get your feedback on. We had one relating to last week's topic, which was Windows 10s, and it sounds like most of you, the limitations of Windows 10s were a deal breaker for you. So you can follow up with that on the Facebook and Twitter, and also check out last week's episode. You can subscribe to Close to the Metal in iTunes and Stitcher, and that's a great way to get the podcast. You could check out all of the back episodes that we've got and listen to them at your leisure, if you will, and keep up to date with everything that we've been talking about. So I think that's it. Thanks everybody for tuning in so much, and we'll be back next week with another episode. Update.